I want to talk a little bit about Final Fantasy 16. It's no secret that the series has needed a bit of a facelift for some time now. The last 3 single-player Final Fantasies have done significantly worse than the previous games. Now, Metacritic isn't everything, and the 80s is not really a bad score, but it's this downward trend that is concerning. And Metacritic aside, these last 3 Final Fantasies have honestly just felt really different, and the company just seems like it's just not the same Square Enix or Square that it once was. They've shown time and time again that they're a bit slow to adapt to new trends in the gaming industry, and they're known to be a bit out of touch with Western audiences sometimes. But Final Fantasy 16 has a lot of things going for it. Most of all, the man and the legend himself, Yoshi P. He's known as somewhat of a messiah figure in the Final Fantasy franchise. So far, it seems like he can do no wrong, bringing Final Fantasy back from the brink of destruction and turning it into one of the most successful MMOs and games in the past decade. And it's going to be the team that did all of that is going to be taking on Final Fantasy 16. And from what they've shown, the game looks really good. And I do believe that we're on the brink of a new era of Final Fantasy. So in this video, I wanted to talk a little bit about the things that I'm seeing that are different about this Final Fantasy in comparison to the last 3 single-player Final Fantasies, and some things that are just completely different in the franchise in general that are just brand new in this game. So first and foremost is the combat. Final Fantasy is officially switching to an action-based combat system. This is something that Final Fantasy 12 through 15 have kind of toyed with a bit. Final Fantasy 1 through 10 has more or less been a turn-based game. Final Fantasy 12, 13, and 15 have been this kind of weird in-between, like they're kind of action games and kind of not, still kind of turn-based, but also not. And in Final Fantasy 16, it seems like they finally decided, hey, we are going to leave this RPG turn-based system behind us, and we are going to update with the times. We're going to make an action-based game. Now, when I say update with the times, action-based games aren't new at all, but if you look at the game franchises that are most successful today, they're action-based games. There's still plenty of examples of turn-based games that do decently well, but the big AAA mainstream games, how many of those are turn-based? Can't really think of any. Maybe Persona, which I'd say arguably the combat in Persona is probably its weakest part. People don't play Persona for the combat. But anyways, that's another story. Please tell me in the comments why I'm wrong. I'm sure everyone has a lot of opinions on that. But think about it. God of War, Elden Ring, Zelda, The Witcher 3, people like action-based combat. The games that use it are selling well. And if Final Fantasy wants to continue to be one of the biggest franchises in gaming, it makes sense to me that they need to update a bit with the times. And it seems like Yoshi P is very aware of that, and that's what they're going to be doing with Final Fantasy 16 in more ways than just the combat, I hope, as well. And of course, just recycling and stealing other people's ideas and concepts is not how you create the next big AAA game, or maybe that is actually how that's done today. Yeah, never mind. But regardless, I do give Square Enix some credit for trying to stay original and not just trying to chase new trends and whatnot. But the video game industry is a very fast-moving industry, and there's just a certain expectation that you need to kind of keep up with the times to stay relevant, to make games that feel fresh and new. There's only so many times people want to go back and replay the same combat system and do the same thing over and over again. And I know that Yoshi P is very aware of this. I remember hearing in the No Clip documentary that when Yoshi P took over Final Fantasy XIV, that the developers of Final Fantasy XIV, the original developers, hadn't even played World of Warcraft. Think about that. You're making an MMO, which probably costs, I don't know, hundreds of millions of dollars, and you haven't even peeked over at the most successful MMO of all time just to see why maybe people liked it a little bit. There's just so many lessons that you can learn from other developers, from other games, that will save you years and years of development and making bad choices, and will just, at the end, make the game more fun for the end user. So I can't really put my finger on it, but I just feel like this game is going to be updated in a way that the other Final Fantasies just haven't felt like in years. I think for a while, Final Fantasy was a big leader in the video game industry back in the Super Nintendo, PlayStation days. So they're used to maybe setting the standard, starting trends. But those days are long gone, and if they want to be relevant, they need to look to other games, and it seems like that's what they're doing, like I've mentioned. So with the combat, it's action-based. Yoshi P brought in someone from Devil May Cry 5 that worked on their combat system to work on the Final Fantasy 16's combat system. This seems like a really great blend. For those of you that haven't played Devil May Cry, it may look like it's kind of a hack and slash, like mindless game, but for those of you that have played it, know that that's not true at all. While sure, yeah, it's a lot of action, the combat has a lot of depth, the games are really hard, and it takes a while to get good at them. It's not just Dynasty Warriors hack and slash. So I'm really excited for this big change in the combat. I think if the game is successful, this will be the new standard going forward. I would be really excited to see where they go from there for 17 and 18. I don't know, maybe they slow down and they make the combat a little bit less crazy. Maybe they make it more crazy. I don't know, but either way, we're going in a different direction, and I'm really excited to see it. And I think one of the fears that Square Enix may have had that prevented them from making this decision before in other games is that they didn't want to alienate the audience of people that were playing their games, people that were used to turn-based combat. A lot of people that play Final Fantasy are playing for the story and don't want to learn some complex battle system, and I totally get that. From a recent showcase of Final Fantasy 16, they've actually addressed this. There's items that you can equip that will make the combat more simple, where you don't have to press every single button. You don't have to be a master of the combat to play it, allowing almost anyone to play the game while keeping the difficulty and the complexity still there with the combat. I think this is a great solution, and I do think other games might implement similar systems if it's received well. So far, it seems like it has been received well, but there's no real way to know until the game comes out. Another thing that I've noticed in Final Fantasy 16 that is completely different from any other Final Fantasy is the main character, Clive, and his age in particular. Clive is going to be the oldest Final Fantasy protagonist ever. Obviously, 11 and 14 don't count, or any of the other spin-offs, but the mainline Final Fantasy characters have all been really young, from 15 to maybe 21, like really young people. And it makes sense that those older games had younger characters. They were appealing to a younger audience back then. Back in the 90s and the early 2000s, there were a lot of younger players playing Final Fantasy. But these days, I don't think 12-year-olds are picking up Final Fantasy. I think they're playing Roblox, Minecraft, Fortnite. I don't know what kids are playing today, but whatever it is, it's not Final Fantasy. The people that are playing Final Fantasy are dudes in their 30s and 40s, let's be honest. So it makes a lot of sense that, hey, the main character, it's this dude in his 30s. And I think what that shows is that Square Enix is aware of who their audience is. Hey guys, I was editing the video right now, and I know how much you guys love to correct every little thing in the comments, which I appreciate, helps out the algorithm. But yes, I'm aware for part of the game, Clive is 15 in flashbacks, but that's really not the point. Other games had flashbacks too. For the most part, it looks like Clive is going to be actually 28 and then also maybe 30s. So either way, 28, 30, that's still much older than the other Final Fantasy protagonists. All right, back to the video. There's also lots of women that play Final Fantasy, more so than I'd say the average video game. But even for them, I think they would rather play Clive, this scruffy, handsome, 30-something looking dude that has a dog, rather than Moody Squall with a Hot Topic belt. But hey, maybe I'm wrong. I'm no expert, but that's just makes sense to me. Another thing that I noticed about this game is that it looks absolutely gorgeous, but it also looks really gritty, and it seems like the story is going to be very mature and very serious and gritty. And that's actually not that new. Like, sure, some of the Final Fantasies are more colorful and cheerful, but Final Fantasy has always dealt with mature adult themes. It's always been a game franchise that wasn't afraid to deal with more serious subject matter. So this tells me as well that Square Enix is keeping the good, keeping the stuff that we love about Final Fantasy, the icons, summons, GFs, whatever you want to call them, the chocobos, the amazing music. The music sounds great in this game. I hope there's airships. Is there airships in this game? There should be airships in this game. One thing worth mentioning is that you can turn into the summons, icons, whatever they are, and it looks freaking amazing. It reminds me of like Shadow of the Colossus or mixed with God of War and super stylized with that Final Fantasy flair. Basically, I think there's a lot of things to be excited about with Final Fantasy 16. It's silly for me to say this right now, but hey, honestly, it probably will be Game of the Year. In my opinion, it's probably going to be between Final Fantasy 16, Starfield, or obviously the new Zelda game. That looks amazing as well. But yeah, 2023, I mean, people always at the beginning of a year act like, oh, this year's just sucks, there's no good games coming out, and that's totally crap. There are so many good games coming out this year. Final Fantasy 16 is one of them at the top of the list. I'm stoked for it. Please let me know what you guys think as well. Is there something that you noticed that looks different about this game that I didn't talk about? Do you think it's gonna be good, or do you think it's just gonna be a meh game? I don't know, could be. Let me know in the comments, and I'll definitely be streaming it when it comes out, so follow me on Twitch. Make sure you like, subscribe, all that stuff, and until next time, I'll see you guys later.